My name's Dr. Greg Gilligan, Superintendent of Schools. Thrilled to have folks here tonight. The last few forums we've had, we've been really fortunate to have our town manager, Melissa Murphy Rodriguez, with us, along with the Director of Administrative Services, Lori Burzlaff. They're not able to be here tonight. They have their own board meeting tonight downtown, but they've been excellent. It's been terrific to partner with the town manager. I meet with her once a week. And I'm really looking forward to working with her for many years to come on a long-term plan for the kids here in North Andover. School committee members tonight, we have two of them present. We have Amy Mabley and Pam Petrowski. Thanks for coming out. We have the Kittredge School principal, the head kangaroo here, Mr. Richard Cushing. Captain Kangaroo. Captain Kangaroo. And then we have our Kittredge rep on the subcommittee, Christy Martin. Oh, there's Christy. And last but not least, we have Dr. Jim Maley, Assistant Superintendent for Finance and Operations. And I'll turn it over to him in a few minutes. But I want to start out by just saying, really thrilled for the folks that came out tonight. I know some have seen this on some other forums on YouTube. But this is really important work that's ahead of us, the ability to impact class size, become ADA compliant, provide the space and equity needed for 21st century learning, while building capacity for future growth. You know, simply put, schools of this age, and this school's 71 years old, they weren't designed for the learning that takes place today. And that includes everything from a traditional classroom to a spot for EL, to special education, to OT/PT, to speech. Reading, you name it. And simply put, we need to create the best places for teachers to teach and students to learn. And make no mistake about it, Facilities Masterplan 2 will be a long-term project. Recently, we just had the MSBA out to visit the other day, which was exciting, and that stands for the Massachusetts School Building Authority. And they help with funding if a school makes it into the queue. 58 schools applied to the core program, and we were one of 20 selected to be visited for a senior site study and a conference call. So they sent out architects and engineers out here to visit the school to take a look at all the space. I think Mr. Cushing has turned every spot of this school into a usable space for education. And so they came out and they're gonna let us know by December, and if not in December, at the latest March, on their decision on whether North Andover moves forward for the Kittredge School in the next step. Meanwhile, as part of Facilities Master Plan 2, this is one of the schools in that recommendation from the school committee, along with the Franklin, Atkinson. We have the Kittredge. NAMS, obviously, everyone knows that NAMS is pretty packed, and it's been on our list for many years. We've been applying to the MSBA for many years with NAMS, and also ABEC in terms of physical education space. And last but not least, oftentimes people think Facilities Master Plan 2 is just a school project. It's not. It's a town project as well, which includes the fire station out on Johnson, the split at Johnson and Salem, where they'd add an additional bay for an ambulance, as well as bunks. We have female firefighters now. So that they could have a separate sleeping quarters, and also in addition to the North Andover Youth Center. So big project, and it's no doubt this important work really will impact in a positive way our kids for the next 40, 50 years to come. So without further ado, I want to introduce Dr. Maley, who has done tremendous work on this project along with many parents and staff. So Dr. Maley.
Thank you. Welcome to what we hope will someday be referred to as the old part of Kittredge School. You can tell we're optimistic in the school department by how many chairs we put out for these events. I also want to introduce Al Creves. Al is a member of the Mount Vernon group. They are the consultants that have been working with us throughout this process and will continue to work with us through the process, and they've been extremely helpful. Dr. Gilligan mentioned Facilities Master Plan, and this is phase 2 if you haven't heard. Just as a reminder, phase 1 included where we are right now, the Kittredge gym. It was the first project that was done as part of that facilities master plan. It included the town hall renovation, the school building administration, a school administration building across the street, DPW renovation, fire station number 1, which is the new one up by the high school, the Brad Street, adding on the kindergarten to the preschool, and the senior center, which is kind of kicking into gear now. If you've ever driven behind the China Blossom, it's really active now. So that was 1. And 2, always was intended to be school projects, and mainly school projects. As Dr. Gilligan said, there are a couple of town projects, but the focus on phase 1 was for the town, and on phase 2 for the schools. That's why they're here. And that includes the Atkinson Elementary, our 3 oldest elementary schools, Atkinson, Franklin, and Kittredge. The North Andover Middle School, Dr. Gilligan mentioned, one of the largest ones in the area with the largest class size, and definitely in need of renovation. The Brad Street, while that's fairly new, funding limited us in what we could do with regards to the gym, and we certainly need, those kids there deserve to have a larger gym, and the school needs it to manage the day. And then North Andover Fire Station number 2 in the youth center. So specifically for school projects, what we've been trying to do is renovate these older schools, ensure equity, and provide needed support spaces for the 21st century learners, kind of holding Sargent as the model of what a 21st century school should look like and the space that should be there for the students. That's what we want for all of our elementary schools in the district. We want to be able to impact class size, we want to build capacity for future growth, and we want to be able to eliminate portable classrooms. We have a couple at Atkinson, we have 3 at Franklin that are well past their expected lives. First thing we did, MVG conducted building assessment for us. All of this information is available on the website. If you go to the school district website and you click on school committee, under school committee is a subcategory, school capacity subcommittee. If you click on that, it takes you to these assessments, takes you to the enrollment projection report we did, it takes you to the final report that we generated, the subcommittee generated to the school committee that allowed them to make their decision on the final recommendation. All of that is available there, as are the presentations and these meetings, these public forums. So if you need any information, you can go there. So the building assessments, not surprisingly, found our older schools are in need of renovations, the mechanical systems need to be modernized, the schools need to be brought up to modern code, including adding fire suppression sprinkler systems. Kittredge, actually, when we added the modulars, the classrooms over here, we were required to add a sprinkler system. It didn't have one originally. We haven't done that kind of renovation at Atkinson or Franklin, so they still don't have fire suppression systems. And so we keep saying, while we're grandfathered in for a lot of things like that and other code requirements and ADA code requirements, that's not a good thing. It just means we've got to take care of it. We need to meet the ADA requirements, we need to provide environments more conducive to learning, and we want the ability to improve indoor air quality. One of the things that we were limited, while we had testing done when the pandemic hit of air quality, and we were up to standard, we could only go so far in improving air quality. We opened windows and we put in new filters, but our systems are old and they can't handle the best filters. And so having new systems would allow you to do that as well. In equity, we talked about this before. We want to make sure all schools have space to allow for growth, to be able to impact class size, to have the appropriate support spaces, have dedicated appropriate special ed spaces. Kittredge is the best example. One year, there's a library here and an art room there, and the next year, nope, we got to use that for a classroom, so that's on a cart, or music's on a cart. Every year, it's just changing depending on enrollment and priorities. And then all schools should provide environments conducive to learning. So what does that mean for Kittredge? Well, Kittredge was built in 1949. The modular classrooms that you come through to get here were added in 2010. This gym was added in 2013. According to the assessment, the exterior is in good to fair condition. The interior is in fair to poor condition. We had, Dr. Gilligan mentioned that MSBA came out for the tour, and while we were walking, we didn't have to say much. The building speaks for itself. If you've had the opportunity to take a tour of the building, you can see that we've turned, Rich has turned, because I get the request every summer, and I'm like, how are you finding this space? But they do. The electrical service got moved outside, and he said, all right, well, there's another closet I can turn into something. Excuse me. So they have taken every inch possible, but it's still not adequate for what we need to do. We need to meet the ADA requirements and the other modern codes. We want to replace our steam boilers with hot water, much more effective and efficient. And the electrical is mostly original and in fair to poor condition. So if you do go online and check out the assessments, you'll see pictures like this. This is just a sample of them. You can't see it too well, but basically you've got the interior and exterior non-compliant and access egress. Water infiltration is occurring. You've got non-ADA fixtures and the original steam heat and original electrical components. You could definitely see them better online. And one of the things we did is what we call a space analysis. We looked at each elementary school, and we looked at what the existing rooms are and what the current square footage of those rooms are. And then what we would want in the school and what the MSBA guidelines suggest you should have for square footage in rooms such as that, and then kind of the difference. So you can see we're looking to have many more classrooms than we have now so we could have more students. An art room, when we do have the art room, is about 700 square feet when it should be 1,000. We don't have a music room right now. That should be 1,200 square feet. A reading room of 140 should be a reading room of 500 square feet. The cafegimatorium, now the not even an auditorium.
No, the cafetorium, no. It's
Just a
not.
caf.
Just a caf now.
Yeah. Is total, that counts the kitchen and the caf at 1,680. It should be about 2,600 square feet, and that's why we have to do more lunches than most schools do. The gym is definitely right where it should be. It comes up a little short, but that's because 6,000 counts this space over here, which we didn't count for that, so we're right where we should be with the gym. Library Media Center is about half of what it should be. The support spaces are less than half of what they should be, as is our special education space. We have great special education programs here at Kittredge, some district-wide ones, and it's just not adequate space. And the nurses space, and so as you can see, it's not surprising. We've turned storage rooms and closets into education spaces that were never meant for it, and certainly aren't conducive to the kind of learning we want our students to do. So we did the same thing. I won't go through them as much, but we did the same things with the other elementary schools. Atkinson, built in 1964, as a middle school. Was it a middle school or a junior high school?
Middle school.
It was middle?
Or junior high, it depends on what you call it at the time.
Yeah. Because it was, they have a sufficiently sized kitchen, cafeteria, and gym, because they were built for larger students and a larger enrollment. So those don't have to be changed. They can just be renovated and modernized. But they have a flat roof, which most of the roof is slanted. Some of it's flat. That's failing. The interior is mostly good to fair, but pretty much the same conditions we saw with Kittredge. We need to replace the steam boilers. The piping is 50-plus years old. We're always in Atkinson, more so than other schools, repairing broken pipes. Same with electrical, mostly original and needs constant repair. No fire suppression, and they don't have an elevator. They have a lift like Kittredge does, but that's not really ADA compliant. But we are, like I said, we are grandfathered. Again, pictures, their roof in particular, cracking, bubbling, pooling. The original hardware and clearances do not meet ADA compliance, neither do the access from one floor to the other, and then original electrical components. And we did the same analysis, so you can see here, The caf and kitchen and the gym don't need any additional space, but many of the other spaces do. The art and the music, same situation. It gets moved around every year, as does the library. And the other spaces are just not adequately sized. And then Franklin, built in 1958, extended in 67 by adding a wing. And then the portables, Atkinson and Franklin both have portables. Franklin has 3 of them that are well past their expected lives. And then all the other conditions are pretty much the same as we saw with Atkinson. Again, the pictures show, and here, a few of our schools have the original VAT flooring, which, while it's down, is safe, but once it starts to crack, it has asbestos material, so that needs to be mitigated, and during these renovations, we would take it all out and finally get rid of it for good. Same space analysis. They have a nice library at Franklin, but they have the most inadequate gym in the district. If you've ever been to Franklin, it looks like a couple of classrooms got just put together, and that's the space they use for the gym. Woefully inadequate. The caf and kitchen are pretty good size, so we would only renovate them. But again, other areas using closets and whatever space they can find for the programs in the school. One of the things that people should realize, if they don't already, education is so much different than it used to be. 30, 40 years ago, it was rows of students, and maybe even going back further than that. So you had 30, 35 kids in a classroom, and most activities took place in that one classroom. Nowadays, the specialists are in another room. The programs that we have at our schools for special education and support services need spaces outside of the room. So that's why this space issue has come up, is because education is delivered in a much different way than it used to be. And you've heard the middle school. The middle school is the first one that we had submitted for 4 years ago with MSBA. We got to the same stage with them, but we didn't get any further. And people ask this year, did you submit for the middle school? We did. We submitted for the middle school, Atkinson, Franklin, and Kittredge. But you have to prioritize. And so we put Kittredge first. And there are a lot of reasons we did that. One, I kept using the expression, put your worst foot forward, because we felt like this was our best chance. If we were going to get MSB approval, plus it was the most expensive project. If you're going to get something financed, it might as well be the one that costs the most. And it's the one that's most in need of replacement. So the visit, like I said, the building spoke for itself. We came away from that visit feeling pretty good. We'll see. Dr. Gillen, did you want to add to that? Or are you just stretching?
Not at this time.
Okay. But the middle school, it hasn't changed. It's still in need. It's the largest, one of the largest middle schools around with class sizes. And it's older. It has had some renovations, but it's also a middle school versus an elementary school. The older the students, the more wear and tear on a school. So it definitely needs some work. And there's still some ADA and modern code requirements that need to be met. The idea is to add classrooms/science labs that would give us modern science rooms and allow us to free up other rooms, the science rooms that are now, for additional classrooms. Similar, you can see these online, the pictures that we have of the conditions at the middle school from MVG's assessment. One of the other things that we did as part of the subcommittee in planning these projects in making the recommendation, we did some enrollment projections. A couple of consultants, we did 2 so that we could compare. We were very sensitive to enrollment projections because in the past, North Andover has made some poor enrollment projections. If anyone here has ever heard about Foster Farms, it's a school that they wanted to build to replace Kittredge at the time. And they were using enrollment projections. What they did is they used a very small period of time leading up to that point. So they looked back about 3 years where there was a spike in enrollment and said that's going to continue for the next 10 years and we're going to have 1,000 more elementary students. Well, the spike ended and it went back to the normal slope. and we didn't see that growth. It kind of just leveled off. So we were very sensitive to that. We looked at a large window of data, 25 years, to figure out what the trend has been. And it's been consistently about 35 students per year for the district growing. And that's what both consultants found. One was a little higher, one was a little lower, but when you took the median between the two, it was right around that same pattern we had been seeing. And you can see it graphically. You can see that's the peak that they were looking at, and then it came back down and kind of leveled off. And we've had some valleys. This is, we think, the impact of COVID right now on enrollment, but you can't really see it here. There's a dotted line that kind of just follows this as a straight line slope that averages about 30 to 35 students per year, and that's what we anticipate to continue. So, our recommendation, and this was based on a lot of feedback we got from you in the community. Chrissy can attest to how much time we spent on putting together the survey, and we had a great response to the survey. We had over 800 responses. We did a staff survey as well and had a good response, but it was clear, the results were very clear. People wanted to maintain the current grade distribution, meaning kindergarten on its own, grades 1 to 5 at the elementary level, middle school being 6 to 8, not 7 and 8, or 5 and 6 and 7 and 8, and the high school being 9 to 12. They want to maintain the neighborhood schools, but they do want to add capacity and renovate to address equity, support spaces, 21st century learning, class size, and enrollment growth. Want to be able to remove those portables, but always being fiscally responsible because this is North Andover. So the Kittredge project, the specific recommendation that we came out with based on MVG's recommendation and our own findings was to build a new one. You can add, you can renovate and add on, but it would be difficult if, again, if you've walked this building and this site, adding on would be extremely difficult and not very conducive to good flow in the building. And it's time. It's the oldest building, a school building in the district. We feel it's time for a new Kittredge. And you can utilize the existing gym. This is in great shape, it's new. You can even utilize for, depending on the design, the modular classroom space, but it would most likely be, I'll show you right now, building off of the gym to the back in that direction in order to be able to conduct the construction while school is still going on, finish off the new building, or most of the new building, and then move the students over and then demolish the existing so that you could continue the education with the minimal impact. And I want Al, this is very important for everyone to hear, because everyone's always thinking, how do you do this? How do you do a school project and not impact education and not put our students in any kind of danger? So I'm just going to ask Al to address this one.
Thank you, Jim. Actually, it's pretty straightforward. We've done many multiple phasing projects in the past, and the simplest answer would be you have to have the first priority is life safety, so safety of the children, parents, and teachers, and completely separating them from the construction. So how do you do that? You fence the construction area off. You have complete separate entry and access to the site while the students are in school and active with their programs. The second piece to that is work with the district to figure out how much of the existing school we can take while still delivering the educational program. So once we establish that, that determines the amount of construction that we can do. In this particular case, it's very straightforward. The majority of the building, in fact, the whole new addition, just in terms of population, once the new building is completely completed while the students are in the existing school, that will be completely separate access. That would be done first. The second piece would be to move the kids into that wing, demolish basically most of the school except for the modular and the gym. And then while that's being done, the kids are still using the school, operating, having parking, all that. and then that gets demolished. Then the remaining portions are built, and then you have the entire site to, for access and use. In this particular case, that could be about a 28 to 28-month project to complete its entirety. But after, I would say, the first 18 months of the construction, all the students will be in the new portion of the school, while the remaining portions get demolished, the remaining site work gets done, and you'll have full access probably after 28 months. But that's what I would say for this particular project. Each one is different, but for this particular project, that's how we would do it.
I just want to stress that these are preliminary designs. They are to scale to show that they could fit on the site. It's a little deceiving because this green part of the drawing makes it look like that's the extent of the property, but you can see that there's still quite a bit of property outside of that as well. The other thing that comes up, people start asking, and this would all be part of the design phase, they start asking about the flow of traffic around the building or in front. Right now that's showing two ways. That has not been the case here at Kittredge. Those would all be things that would come out during the design phase of what makes the most sense. This was mainly to show that a new school could fit on the site, and it could be in a place that allowed us to continue the education in the existing building and then complete the project. So Franklin, regarding Franklin specifically, remove those three classrooms, renovate the interior, including the CAF and the library, renovate the exterior, including the roof and the paving, and all the projects would include new paving. So the new Kittredge, renovated Atkinson, Middle School, and Franklin. Upgrade the electrical, plumbing, and HVAC systems, install a fire suppression system, add 6 classrooms and 4 to 8 support spaces, and get them a new gym, and repurpose the existing. So the initial design for that would be where the gym goes to replace the portable where that was there, and the 2 portables here would go, and you'd have some additional classrooms and support spaces that form the back of the building and connect the wings in the back, which are not connected now. If you come down the wing, anyone knows, this wing, you've got to come all the way back to go down the other wings at Franklin. Similarly with Atkinson, remove the portable classrooms, renovate the interior, including the gym and the CAF, the exterior, upgrade the systems, install a fire suppression system, install an elevator, add 6 classrooms and 4 to 8 support spaces. What we could do at Atkinson is kind of mirror, this is the front of the building as you enter the site and come down towards the front door. So kind of mirror that wing with an additional wing of 2 floors and have the elevator added in. In the middle school, this one is always interesting to people. Those 10 to 15 classrooms, science labs, support spaces, where would those go? It's a fairly tight site, but there is room in the front or on the side. But what people have gravitated towards, and when I say people, I mean architects, is using that courtyard. That's not a Freudian slip. I don't have anything going on right now, but the courtyard could fit, and that was 2 floors, right, Al? That you could build a classrooms and support spaces in there. But again, that's the preliminary look at it. During the design phase, it will become much more clear what makes the most sense for the middle school. And with regards to the ABECC, that's mainly adding the gym that's not sufficiently sized for that building. Right now, this site I'm pointing at is where the preschool playground is. That could be moved just over here next to the kindergarten playground, and that particular part of the property would be sufficient for a adequately sized gym for that school. And then some support space in here would be added as well. And then Dr. Gilligan mentioned the 2 town projects that are right next to each other where Salem and Johnson Streets meet. You've got the fire station number 2. This would be the support spaces for the firehouse, which would allow them to have a separation in the male and female accommodations, and then another bay, which I believe would be for the ambulance. That's my understanding. Yep. And then over at the youth center just across the street, some flex areas as that program continues to be successful and continues to grow. So there's a Facilities Master Plan Committee. Laurie Burzlaff, Dr. Gilligan mentioned earlier, is on it, as is our facilities manager for the town and schools, Steve Foster. Paul Hutchins, the
Chief Building Inspector.
thank you. For whatever reason, I can never remember that. Myself, Lynn Savage, who is the financial director for the town, and Jim Stanford, who is the director of public works, are on that committee. We are having these public forums. This is our third now. Tomorrow night we'll be at the middle school, senior center on November 4th. Town hall is part of the select board meeting that night. We'll present to them. Brad Street, ABECC, on the November 9th, and then the youth center will be December 1. And that's the first kind of round of these. I don't think we'll have as many coming out of the holidays, the new year, but the purpose is going to be a little different. Everything right now is contingent upon the MSBA decision. If they approve this project, then that kind of, the dominoes kind of fall into place as far as how we're going to do the master plan and what the timeline will be and what the funding will look like. If they don't, then that is a completely different scenario. So they have, and we impressed upon them on the visit, that it would be great if you could let us know that we're going to be in during the from the December meeting, because that allows us to then come out of the holidays with the plan. They can wait till March. There's a second meeting that they have the finals decision in March, but we're hopeful we'll know by December. And then, so this set of public forums is just to make people aware of the projects if they haven't been following along, what we're looking to do, and answer any questions. You'll have an opportunity in just a few minutes to ask any questions you have. Coming out of the holidays, the focus is going to be on the timeline and funding plan. So all those questions will be answered then, we hope. So this just kind of reiterates that timeline. The school committee recommendation was made in September. The Facilities Master Plan Committee has been meeting to discuss the cost estimation and timeline, and will do so through December. School projects, public forums, we're conducting those right now. The deliberations will continue up until March. For the most part, could go after that, but March is when the warrants are due for the town meeting. Public education and support initiatives will continue. As I said, that the main focus will be on the funding plan. They'll be available, the same way we're doing it now, YouTube, you can watch or you can attend. And town meeting approval we'll be looking for on May of 22 for the design of the first project, maybe more than one project. It doesn't have to be one, although this is going to be a long process. It's not going to be one right after the other each year, because as you'll see when we come out of the break into the new year, a lot of this, and this is what the town manager has been saying at these meetings, is that we're going to be able to self-fund a lot of these because debt is dropping off. The high school debt drops off, that's huge, and other debt has been dropping off that allow us to fund these projects without going to town meeting for an override vote, which would be extremely helpful not to have to get that. So that kind of extends the timeline, but makes it much more likely that it's going to happen. And then each year after that will be coming for, if design was approved the year before, then it will be the construction funds based on that design at the next year's meeting, and possibly design of the next project, and so on. And I've added this slide. The questions we've been getting have been very good, and the ideas that we've been getting from parents and in the community that have attended these meetings. So they want to make sure that the renovation addresses 21st century technology needs. One of the things that's become clear with the pandemic is things can be different and can be better as we come out of this. There are some things that we've learned from this that have been very helpful. Technology is one of those. Whether it's the ability to, Rich was saying just earlier, that his PTO meetings are so much better attended because they're virtual. That's great to get people more informed and more participation, but also utilizing outdoor space. We've got tents now, and as we design these projects, one of the things we've talked about is during that design phase, let's incorporate some of that outside space into 21st century learning. Have it be accessible with, internet capacity, but also conducive to whatever it is that we want to be able to do outside. Can we partner with the Stevens Library? People are always worried about the library and the life of the library going forward, but it's still going strong, and our own libraries have become library/media centers where a lot of things go on that people don't realize in our libraries besides just reading and getting books. It's green screens are in our libraries where the kids can make their own productions and videos. They do the robotics and what else, Dr. Gilligan?
Just about anything. I mean, it's different studies and different content areas. I mean, it's just a different world.
I feel like I got revenge for Lori Burzloff the other night at one of the meetings. Dr. Gilligan put her on the spot after a question. I just did that to him. How can we make sure our children will be impacted by these projects? There's one of the biggest questions, right? I just mentioned how the timeline's going to get extended out, and well, my students in the 4th grade at Kittredge, they're not going to see a new Kittredge. They'll see it, but they won't benefit from it. So one of the things that we've talked about seriously is the fact that we need to put the middle school up front. No matter what happens with Kittredge, the middle school should be up front because that's going to have the greatest impact on the most students in the district. And so that's one thing that we have discussed. And then I already mentioned about the financial plan and timeline. We expect to have that coming out of the holidays, and would love to have you come back for those meetings, or at least one of them. Now's your opportunity to ask any questions you might have. And if you could just come up to the mic, that way when it is being watched, the audience will be able to hear the question.
Well, people are thinking. Well, folks are thinking and getting a little wait time here for their questions. I think the point made by MVG is really important. They've done hundreds of projects of schools going on at once. I think it's important that everyone knows is the superintendent, the number one aspect of any construction project is the safety of our students. And then number two, doing nothing to impede the delivery of an excellent education. That's or 1A even. So I think those things are very, very important. And we're hopeful, again, as Jim said, to hear, and hopefully by December, around the Kittredge School, because that would be a big ticket item. At the same time, we are cognizant of all the needs at the middle school and the other schools as well. And that's why these have all been recommended by the school committee into the facilities master plan too, which that group will have to order to bring to town meeting to put in the capital improvement plan and take a vote on the first step in May. So it's been exciting. Anyone thinking of any questions that have come up? Oh.
First of all, it's weird facing the thing. My name's Mark Svensson, by the way. It's nice to meet some of you or all of you. Probably the only Kittredge alumnus in the room right now. Maybe not. First of all, thank you. This was great. I walked around the school before the meeting started, and it was old and aged when I was here 25 years ago, and now it's really old and much needed. So I guess a couple questions or a couple comments and then a question. First comment, thank you. This is much needed, and I think a very detailed approach of how we're going about doing this. So that's my one comment. Thank you. My second comment is we've knocked down some school buildings in the past, and I'm a history buff and I love our town history, so I just want to see if there's a way we can incorporate something into the new design. I know when we knocked down Thompson, we saved the granite thing and put it into the brick wall. I don't think Kittredge has any distinguishing marks on the outside of the building, but something to consider when we're designing the new building. So that was my second comment. My only question is, what can we do as people that are supportive of this to help make sure that this project gets moved along? So I guess, show up at town meeting, write to people, how can we help support this?
Well, I think right now, the biggest thing we can do right now is, thank you, Mark, is make folks aware of what other school needs. Make everyone aware, and it's not just our students. We set up a meeting at the senior center so that folks, all the residents in town know what are the needs of the school. And we've also reaching out and trying to have one, at the youth center. We put a notice in the tax bill, which I think everyone in town gets. I know I read that one, because a lot of folks who these projects will impact, they've just moved to town. They might just have a 1-year-old, and so trying to involve them in the future, and then participating going forward, after we've made all the needs, everyone aware of the needs of the schools in the town, and then participating in future forums, and asking good questions. Secondly, to your comments, I'm a history buff too, as a former high school history teacher, so I love the thought of, as we do projects, incorporating some of the old with the new. And there's some really awesome folks in town that have been able to do that with a couple of the projects we have. I will say, to earlier, to the point from MVG, is I was around for the high school when they built it in 2004. I had just become vice principal the following year, but I was a teacher. And they built the old high school. I mean, we were in the old high school, down where the football field is. They constructed the new high school, over 300,000 square feet. They took 3 days prior to the start of school, prior to the start of February break, as professional days. And right before February break, we packed up our stuff and moved in over the break, and then we came back to the new building right after 04 February break. And then they tore down the old building, which later became the athletic fields. So, these types of things happen. They can be done. They can be done on a bigger scale. But again, the safety and not interrupting education is really important.
Was Thompson done the same way also?
Thompson was done the same way, absolutely. Thompson used to be, I think, right to the right. So they have a lot of experience with it. And what it does is if we're fortunate to build a Kittredge school with MSBA funding or as part of this project, it helps us build capacity and give us options as we move forward. And as we continue to have new streets or developments come online as well, with the growth of 35 students a year. So I think folks have looked around and seen the different projects and developments that have grown over the years, and now, we've stayed pretty steady, but we're looking at, this growth of 35 students a year, and this is really to build capacity for space for the future, as well as meet the needs that we have now for what's best for learning styles and programming. Either way.
Yeah, I'll sit. Dan Tiber, thank you. Well, thank you guys. Thank you all for all the work you've done so far in preparing everything. It's a very thorough proposal, and I'm very optimistic that we'll get something moving forward, both inside and outside of Kittredge. So I applaud you guys first and foremost. Thank you. As a realist, I'm curious with the decision-making process, is there ever a scenario where it would not be approved or it would be piecemeal, almost like a partially approved? And what is the contingency for that, if it's a partial approval or no approval? What's the plan if it does not get approved and we have to move in a different direction?
So when you say approved, do you mean approved by MSBA or approved by town meeting?
All of the above. If it doesn't move forward, we have to.
Yeah, so we are moving forward, just as we did with phase one, with these projects as proposed. And the question becomes, how is it going to be funded, right? And so MSBA helps that tremendously by taking what could be a $35, $36 million project and contributing $17, $18 million to that project. So that's a huge help. As far as town meeting, at some point during this stage, during this process, it's likely that there will be a override vote needed, either, well, I say either, but probably for both the capital and operating part, because we're adding a lot of not just space, but staff over the course of these projects. So I'm not going to say we're going in with these are the projects. If we go forward and there's not an approval, then you have to figure out at that point, okay, why did it not pass? What is it about it that could get it to pass if we change this or change that? So we've done a tremendous amount of community surveying and public forums. We did some public forums last year. Christy can attest where we got public input then as well. We've been really responsive to what the community has told us. But if that's not going to get it done, then we'll have to go back and get some more input to what would work. So that's the best I can tell you right now.
And I guess following off that, if it didn't get approved and we had to go back and repick it, would it then would we have to wait until the following year town meeting?
In that particular case, whatever it was that didn't pass as part of this, right. If it doesn't pass it, then you're waiting till the next, and it would take some time to figure out what's going to work, or to take that time to build up support so that passes the next time. Yep.
You know, Dr. Maley mentioned in the beginning, if you can think back to 2013, how many people lived here in 2013? All right, perfect, terrific. If you can think back to 2012, 2013, I believe that's right at the start of Facilities Master Plan 1. And so, you know, if you think about it, there's been several projects. So the new fire station was built up behind the high school. The police station was done over. They built a central office. They put this gym in. They redid town hall. You know, the senior center is probably, I don't know how many months out, but I know I live in the neighborhood, so they've torn down a couple houses. The whole site's all construction. The senior center's on its way. You know, so it is a process over time. You know, I think the exciting part about the MSBA is that if they choose to fund it this year, or invite us into the program, you know, that brings us, as Jim said, a good chunk of change, puts less burden on us as a community and taxpayers, so we can have funding to continue to work on these other projects as well. So.
And I'll just add that we have found, if we do our due diligence and we are very thoughtful in our plan, that we have been very lucky and successful in getting the support for these projects. I'll go back to something that Mark was saying regarding maintaining the historical significance. I, too, was a history major in high school social studies teacher, and I also attended the oldest public elementary school in the country, the Mather School in Dorchester. And I have bored my children by bringing them by a few times on Father's Day, because I get to choose what I want to do on Father's Day. So I've done that a few times now, and I can tell you that it's very important to those of us who have gone through and it has a special place in our heart to try to maintain as much as possible that historical significance. Other questions?
Jim, as you start to look at the timeline, someone had asked me, what are the barriers that might, like, is there any way to speed up the construction process? Because so many people see the need now, right? We're invested in the town now. Like, are there things that as a community we can also support, or barriers that you foresee?
Yeah, so the question, if you couldn't hear it, is how do we speed up the process when possible and get past some barriers that might prevent us from doing these projects? It's kind of competing interests, right? Where everybody wants these done now versus how do we get the approval for them and how do we get the funding for them? So that's going to be the delicate balance, is whenever we can, you know, if we've got the funding for a particular project, let's just make it happen and make it happen as quick as possible. The other competing interest is obviously the safety and education, because you're talking about school projects and you can't rush those because you've got to phase them so that the kids the students continue to get educated and are safe. So as much as possible, we're going to get these projects done quickly, but at the same time, we've got to balance all the other variables. Any other questions?
Just to that point, I think, I've been saying at these meetings, when's the best time to plant a tree is today. But the other day I heard the saying a little differently. When was the best time to plant a tree? It was probably 20 years ago. When's the second best time to plant a tree? And that's today. And so, you know, these are longer term projects, and we are cognizant of the fact and aware that, you know, when we come out to schools and we're making everyone aware of these needs, folks really want to know, how is this going to impact me and my students, and, you know, who's coming up? You know, and so depending on what order these projects go in as we move forward, you know, will be determined by the Facilities Master Plan 2 Committee, and what plays a huge factor in that is whether we get that funding from the MSBA or not. That really, you know, it plays a major role in part of this, in this order. Other questions? Anyone else? Questions going once? All right, here we go. We got another question here.
So I know if the MSB money comes through, that is slated for Kittredge. If that money doesn't come through, is the order decided? Like, could the middle school be done first versus Kittredge, or is that the order still kind of up in the air?
Yeah, so as Dr. Milley pointed out earlier, all these projects have been, so the school committee made a recommendation of these being the projects that are the priorities for the school district to go to the Facilities Master Plan 2. And they would have to order the projects. Either way, whether we get MSB funding or we don't, that plays that factor. But they're going to have to put them in a particular order for us to move forward, attending to needs. So,
So it changes the conversation, but it doesn't necessarily change the plan. It could. If you think about the reasons it makes sense for Kittredge to go first, there's other reasons besides MSBA approval, and now you're in the timeline, their timeline. One is it's the highest cost item, and if you move it down, the further you move it down, the more inflation occurs, and so the more expensive it becomes for, you know, a $36 million versus a maybe $5 million project. So you have that. You also have the fact that you're adding much more capacity with Kittredge, a new Kittredge, than you are with the renovations to the other schools. So you've built extra capacity into the district that might allow you to better handle the other renovations and phase those projects. So in either of the models, we are still talking about the middle school being kind of up front. So that could be in conjunction with, if we get approval, with the Kittredge project, not, you know, waiting till that one's done. So the best I can tell you is that there's a lot of good reasons for it besides MSBA approving it. So we'll have to have that conversation. And it could change the outcome, but it might not.
So just to clarify, when you say they have to decide the order, you mean the school building committee, Lori Burzlaff, you, town DPW and all that stuff? That's the they who's deciding that, correct?
When I say they, right, the timeline and the funding plan are the Facilities Master Plan Committee working with the town manager, working with the superintendent, school committee, select board, making those final decisions. Correct. Yep. And I will say it's been a pleasure to work with the town manager, Melissa Rodriguez. I can share with you that when we were talking about these projects, and we put a lot of time, Christy can attest, we put a lot of time into this, and it always seemed like it was going to be contingent upon an override vote for this to happen. And then a conversation I had a couple of months ago with the town manager where she was working on, this debt falling off and we can fund a lot of these projects. For the first time I thought, this is going to happen. This is really going to happen. And so it was really encouraging, and she's been great to work with. Any other questions? Well, thank you very much for coming out. Spread the word. We have a few more of these. And like I said, we'll be keeping you informed as to the MSBA decision, and we'll be having more of these coming out of the holidays to let you know what the timeline and funding plan is. So thank you very much.